formal meeting starts at 7.
What is,
Islands Trust, she said. I don't know why.
what does that mean? Does that mean you have to go?
Certainly by 7, yes.
Oh, okay. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Hi. Sorry, that's the second time I forgot the
It's
time.
okay.
Second time in how many years?
Yeah.
We'll forgive you.
At least you didn't have to get in your car and drive across the island.
This is true.
Usually he has to drive from City Hall.
Yeah.
I'm actually in Vancouver today,
Oh,
but I have to see the doctor tomorrow about something. So one of those things.
okay, let's get going. Introduction of late items.
Nothing from me.
So there was the thing from the from Heritage BC approving the grant. There's also the symposium idea, Maureen.
Yes.
Is that it? I feel like there's one more thing.
No, it was just the 2 items that we had identified. And,
Okay.
and Steph, if you could add, do you have a copy of the notification from Heritage BC?
So I just don't have access to my servers. If it's an email, I can get it.
I think it went to Melissa. Is that correct?
I think I shared it with you and Steph by
By
email.
email. Okay, so I'm just gonna add, so grant update, and sorry, what was the second one? Heritage Symposium.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, did you hear that Don Luxton won a lifetime achievement, received a lifetime achievement award?
Okay.
I think from Heritage BC.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Also, I haven't had a chance to look at the agenda, but I wonder if we needed to ratify the 2 resignations. I'm assuming it's still 2 there.
No, it's council.
Who are the 2? Judy and who else?
Andrew?
Andrew.
Does Andrew not have to write to council?
Yes. Yeah.
He can write to me, and I tell council on the
Okay.
at the open agenda.
Okay, and that's the other thing we need to talk about. Maybe we should put that on as looking for new members. Maureen, maybe that was the other thing I was thinking of.
Sure, we could put that under new business. Just
Yeah.
regarding Judy's resignation, a letter from council has gone to her. It's included in the July 12th agenda.
Okay.
So sorry, what am I looking for? I just found the Heritage Fund grant information in my email.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to include that document in the, because it's,
But what else was I looking for?
nothing.
No.
Just we would just say that we would briefly talk about the idea of having some kind of heritage symposium. So it would just be an item to go on the agenda, but there's no documents associated with it.
Okay.
So the additions to the agenda are a heritage symposium, the grant being approved, which is just the information point, and new
Membership.
members. Yeah, membership.
Okay. As amended.
Thank you. So then I think I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So
If I could have that. Thank you, Maureen, and a seconder. Since we are only 4, then this is burden of motioning and seconding is going to fall heavily on you 3.
A burden to bear.
Should I know who Amanda is?
Oh, sorry, Peter. Amanda is our new planning support person, and she is in general standing in for Jennifer, because Jennifer's away for 6 months, I think. Is it 6 months?
Yes, Jennifer is currently on leave until end of December. So yeah, I will be the staff liaison for this committee. And this is my 3rd week on the job. So I'm still new, but I am passionate about history, and yeah, so I'm looking forward to this meeting and to the work that we have to do.
Nice to meet you, Amanda.
Nice to meet you, Peter.
Okay, now I need so do we regard the agenda as approved then? I'm never very good at this procedural stuff.
All in favor?
Oh, thank you. Maybe you could do it, Steph.
Rondi, in favor?
Yes,
All right,
Also
next.
moved.
Thank you. And the minutes. If hopefully everyone's had an opportunity to look at the minutes, and if they have, does anyone have any? Sorry, what are you saying, Randy?
approve them as written.
Approve them as written. Thank you. And all those in favor?
Yes.
Peter?
I can't vote because I didn't read them.
Peter abstained because he didn't read the minutes. Okay, and I don't think we have any public for comments. Organization updates.
So I've just put the organization because I'm not, there's museum, heritage, metro, parks. I'm never really sure who has an update. So
Yeah. Does anybody have an update?
I do. From Metro. So we sent a letter under the CEO's name to Jeff Fitzpatrick at Metro Vancouver regarding the Davies Orchard. And we made 2 specific requests.
Hi, everybody.
To ask strongly that there be a meeting with the Heritage Commission, and that there be a public presentation this fall to update on the progress on the Davies Orchard. So I'll read you a bit of this email. I don't have permission yet to include it in the agenda, but this will give you the gist of it. Okay. With regard to the request for engagement outlined in the June 14th follow-up letter, we're happy to provide an update to BIM Council in a public meeting as Phase 2 plans come together. Phase 2, if you remember, is the public space and the site amenities within the orchard. Mid-fall is when they anticipate doing that. We're happy to meet with the Heritage Commission to ensure their understanding of the project and for them to provide feedback. We will reach out to the Heritage Commission over the next couple of weeks to provide an update and coordinate attending their fall meeting or a standalone meeting sooner. I think that's the relevant parts of it. So in asking for greater engagement with Metro, we made the request more specific and said, here are 2 things that we would like to have happen. And they agreed to do so. The other update from Metro is that the parks agenda has just been published for the coming week. And let me just find it. Okay. So the agenda includes the budget, the capital budget for proposed capital budget for 2022 through 2026. And for Davies Orchard, in 2021, the expenditures are related to the grant that we received, or that Metro received. In 2022, there's $850K in the budget in 2023, there's 750K. So when you add all that together, it's just in excess of $2 million, which is what we were anticipating for the project. The other thing is that in the manager's report, there is a description for the Parks Committee of the Orchard Revitalization Project to keep it top of mind. And there is a description of phase 1, phase 2, the expenditures, and another stated commitment to keep in touch with council and with the Heritage Commission. So while council didn't respond in the way that the commission requested, we did get a response from Metro on a number of the areas that were of concern around communication and engagement and consultation. The issue of the demolition of Cottage 12, though, was not pushed by council. That was let be as a judgment that Metro Vancouver had made in the framework of this project. So that's the Metro report. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Maureen. I think one question when we do meet with Metro is around Cottage 12 and the rationale for its demolition, and one of them, I guess, would be to be able to see the structural report that determines that the cottage isn't salvageable. I recall a conversation with Metro several years ago where somebody said, and I think it was Metro, and it may have just been oral, we could save every cottage on the site, but it just depends on how much money you want to spend. And so I'm suspecting that the decision is as much a cost or an expense issue as presumably this cottage was originally slated to be retained because it was in better condition than some of the ones that were demolished. And so one question would be, if there's not enough budget to restore Cottage 12 in the current time frame, is there enough budget to stabilize the cottage and find funds in the future to restore it down the road? And the other question would be, or could some of the funds be taken from the public space improvement side to fund the restoration of the cottage, and some of those public space elements be funded later? So I think these are some things that are worth asking. So at the very least, the commission is satisfied that all options, all our alternatives have been considered and considered fairly.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that we could do in advance of their meeting with the commission is send them a set of questions so that they come prepared to answer those questions and have an opportunity to be fully informed.
Can I make that an action item then, maybe for Peter? Get a list of questions started?
Yeah, for Peter, I think that's a good idea.
Sure.
Maybe Peter, you can send it around once you start to people.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So that's my report.
Thank you.
And Melissa can get on my case if I let it slip.
We'll phone you.
Yeah, follow me around.
Write it down. Okay, no more questions about the Metro thing. Well, that's good. You said either coordinate, they'll get in touch in 2 weeks and either coordinate for the fall meeting or sooner if that's more appropriate. Now, our next meeting is scheduled for September, I think. And then who are they going to contact to coordinate? Maybe staff or?
It's probably most likely Liam.
Liam, okay,
There's ongoing liaison between Metro and the
Right.
school at the moment.
and he'll probably speak to you.
Yeah.
I don't think it's, I think September is, well, whatever. I mean, personally speaking, I'm happy to meet with them whenever I have pretty flexible schedule, so.
So I'm not seeing us, do we have a set September meeting?
Do we not? When's the next meeting?
It's
Steph?
just, I think it's just September.
Yeah. The
So-
time hasn't been set.
Oh,
Do we
Oh.
want to then place it before or after the meeting with Metro?
I think
well, go on.
it should be the same meeting. I mean,
I think
Metro
that's
should
what
come
Metro's
to the next-
implying.
So we'll just
yeah.
wait to get the date then. Okay.
Okay. Then if there are no more questions about the Metro report, then the next report is council, it looks like to me.
Yeah, and this is just the excerpt from the last council meeting, the June 14th council meeting, where our recommendation came forward, and also where the work plan was presented, and the work plan was approved, and the funding was approved subject to the budget discussion. So there was very little discussion of our work plan itself, although council was familiar with it, and there was no concern expressed about the amount of money that was being allocated. That debate may come up later, but it wasn't a concern at the time.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions about that? Seeing none, let's move on to the next item, which is the determining the heritage criteria, looking at the heritage criteria evaluation form and figuring out what we want to keep or add to that form. Steph, do you have access to that, or you don't because of your thing?
Yeah, I have it in the agenda, but I just checked again. I can't get to the server. I wonder if
I could share.
oh no, I can share it via the agenda, but I can't manipulate it. Did you want to work within the document? Or you go ahead, Maureen. Councillor.
I don't think there's much. I mean, ultimately, we might want to make some changes, but I don't think there's a ton of changes. So, Maureen, perhaps if you did share it, that would be good.
I'm just finding it.
I could probably also.
I have it.
You do?
You have it, Steph?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just if I take notes while I'm sharing, I tend to flash crazy stuff on the screen.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah. So is this precisely Donald's work? It hasn't been revised at all? I don't think it has.
I don't know. It came from Jen's report. It doesn't.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure she imported it wholesale because then he presented from it at our meeting. Obviously it's been Bowenized with the colors and the fonts and everything, but I think aside from that, it's the same.
Okay. For me, some of the questions are related to whether I actually understand what is being flagged. So, for instance, the type of resource where it says engineering work and style references. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what those are.
Sorry, that's down which page?
It's on the first page. So like the fourth item, type of.
Here.
Does anyone know what that means?
So the type of resource and also the section below, which is significance criteria, are the two that I thought that we would probably want to discuss. Style references, I assume, are kind of architectural comments that would be obvious for some buildings and probably more obvious in a city than on Bowen. I'm sure Peter can help us help elucidate that. In general, what we're, I think, trying to establish is the kind of qualitative criteria for that would be suitable for someone who, like a staff member, or you know, a different heritage commission, so that they can think systematically about a space or a building, to think about whether it would be something on the register would be worth a heritage revitalization thingamy. So that's why I thought that those two sections, the significance criteria and the type of resource, are the two kind of qualitative pieces in the form. There's also integrity criteria, but that seems a little bit more simple to me, like that anybody could look at those and when I was thinking about it, I wrote in my mind a list of places and things to kind of see, well, how would that fit with these criteria, or what about this, you know. So I have a little, I actually, in my mind, I actually wrote it down, so I included on that list, for example, Bridal Veil Falls, Opa, the Corduroy Road in near Ferry Fen, Modified Trees, Collins Farmhouse, a random church. So, and I tried to think how whether these would capture something like that, or whether they wouldn't. Also, like perhaps an archaeological site, or paleontology site. I don't think we have any paleontology, but you know, I was just trying to think through a geological, something that's of geological significance. And so I didn't think that these categories quite captured all of that. I think they're fairly urban. So I think we might want to add, we may do them. Also found them a little bit difficult to orient myself in. They're quite associative, contextual, and tangible. I kept getting muddled between what the divisions were between those.
Is there anything for archaeological?
No, not in here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe we would add that to the type of resource.
Yeah, because that could include anything from First Nations midden site on the beach to you know, unearthed bricks from the original brickworks to, you know, you name it, right? Anything that's underground, probably.
Yep. But the bunkhouse where the workmen's, the Japanese bunkhouses were, the for the steamship company, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not that I think that we should conserve all of those. I'm just trying to think, you know.
We're scoping, and
Yeah.
Is there a category that those kind of things fit in? Totally makes sense.
Yeah. and I don't think a cultural landscape doesn't capture archaeology, because I think a cultural landscape is intact. It's not about something that's.
So what would be an example on Bowen? Would the meadows be an example?
Of archaeology.
No, a cultural landscape.
A cultural landscape. Well, arguably, I would say the Cape Lighthouse.
Well, that would be more of I think, a discrete site, but it also might be part of a cultural landscape. I agree with, I think, the meadows.
The Legion would be cultural landscape.
Yeah.
Well, that would be a building, I think. But, also maybe well, the picnic grounds, maybe Bowfest Field, maybe.
Yeah.
And again, like, I just want to stress, like, for posterity, you know, like, these are not suggestions of things we should preserve, but just trying to think like categorically about things, understanding the categories. Sorry, what do you say, Steph?
Baseball?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a cultural landscape.
Yeah.
As well as it's got some structure on
the
it.
building. Yeah.
My suggestion,
Yeah.
Melissa, would be rather than spending too much time figuring out what would fit into what category or other, what we do is just make sure that our categories are inclusive enough that nothing falls through the cracks. That maybe something falls in 2 categories, but we want to make sure that nothing falls in 0 categories.
I guess another way to approach it would be, instead of having tick boxes, have could include statement.
Yeah.
And then if anything comes up, then in the future.
Yeah, including but not limited to.
Yeah.
Why do you think it was important for John Luxton to have these 3 categories? Like, how do they fit in his thinking?
Maureen, I think it's probably because those categories are evaluated differently. And so, for example, the concept of integrity came up, and an archaeological site would likely rank a lot lower on integrity compared to a building, just because of the nature of the fact that it's ruins. So you have to evaluate those kinds of things with a different lens.
That makes a lot of sense, Peter. Thanks. So is that it? The 2 areas of concern, and otherwise it seems good enough to go forward with, and at least.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, it's a form, so it's not very controversial, and it captures everything. I mean, there's photographs. Another useful thing is the section for putting in a bibliography for the historic sources, which is something that we didn't have when we did the register. These will be useful documents. Integrity is something that we talked about a lot when we were talking about the register, and something that Peter talked to Don about integrity with respect to the site. And Don was saying how important integrity is. And obviously the Leven site, there's no building there. It's quite an altered site. And I guess in a sense, it's now a cultural landscape, because, there's really only the aura of what was there left. So, I mean, I assume that the reason it has the whole page is because it's important for something. But I mean, maybe it's important for grants or higher level recognition, but for Bowen Island, well, I guess there's this significance criteria, and maybe that's where the elaboration should be. Like, what is the reason for us valuing this? And that's what we have to get in here somewhere, is what is the reason for valuing something, and have that reasoning be Bowen specific or Bowen compatible, or.
So there's the values summary section that is written rather than checkboxy. And I think that's where you actually can capture some of those points, Melissa.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, in terms of justification though, like if somebody, the use for this form would be to fill it in for like presumably a staff member, or maybe the Heritage Commission would fill it in, and it would be the justification for making a recommendation to staff or to council that a site should be recognised in some way, whether it's to go on the inventory or for register or for something that has more consequences, like for example, heritage revitalization agreement or a designation or something. So it does need to, I think the tick boxes are kind of handy in some respects, because it makes sure that you're capturing what's important. Is a tick box is a justification, isn't it? Like if the box is there and you can tick it, then that is kind of proof that you are meeting some kind of criteria. So there is value in that. I'm just not sure that these top tick boxes meet our needs.
You're talking about in the type of resources section, or where? In the significance criteria?
I don't know. I couldn't figure out the. I couldn't quite make it work for me.
Well, if you took, for example, OPA.
Yeah.
The type of resource, it doesn't fall in there. There isn't a category for it. There's also one of the questions that's asked in the first on the first page is whether something is publicly owned or not. So OPA is on private land.
Yeah.
And I think it would be important, if we're revising this, to indicate whether something is on private land and whether the property owner is supportive of including it in a heritage registry.
Yeah.
That's not mandatory by any means, but I think council would feel more comfortable knowing that the private property owner was supportive of its inclusion.
Yeah.
I agree with that, because a private owner can always be consulted at a later date. If they come in with an application that violates setbacks in the land use bylaw, we can always bring up, the fact that that council could relax those setbacks if they consider retaining the heritage structure. So, yeah.
If I could just mention something, because I've recently reviewed the documents in the heritage folder, and it seems like this form is a really fantastic tool in terms of categorizing assets. At the same time, it is a little bit different from what I would consider values-based planning or heritage conservation. And so I think that it's laid out this way, and it's mentioned briefly in the accompanying report, that, you know, he was trying to steer away from incorporating bias into this form. So as we identify our values on Bowen, some examples of types of values that I've come across in the past has been, you know, cultural or educational and academic. And something that we're seeing now a lot more is communities, whether it's provinces or local municipalities, prioritizing Indigenous culture or less dominant cultural forms, and including that in their plans.
So how would that be better articulated in the values summary section of the form?
So I think that if we identified a few key values statements, such as, you know, we recognize the importance of Indigenous history, for one, if you know, for example, and then if there was a checkbox next to that, and if we can identify what we really wanted to prioritize and what we think was valuable, then that could, that is an approach I've seen before, and that might be something we can incorporate into the form if you so choose.
So are you suggesting putting checkboxes into the values summary section?
Yeah, I think so. Or having some sort of flexible list, or sometimes there are vision statements or thematic statements that can be made. I am careful, I don't want to step on anyone's toes here, but I think there might be space for it's just an idea that I had, but we can, I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, you could do both. I mean, you could have a series of prompts and then just to allow, you know, an open space for further comment.
Mm-hmm.
And that would cover off, you know, prompting people to think about things when they're specific things, when they're constructing a value statement.
Yeah, I think we talked about maybe having a list of types of heritage values. And I think we could put that list, as you said, as a I hope I'm understanding you, Maureen, have that as a list at the top of the values summary, like as a, you know, for example, you know, we said could include, is that what you said, Peter?
Yeah, it could include, or, you know, not limited to.
Not
could include
limited
X, Y,
to.
Z, but not limited.
Yeah.
That way,
Yeah.
it's not interpreted as saying we're only concerned with the bullet points.
Yeah.
Or the,
Yeah. So maybe we need to put in the values summary, maybe we put in a statement like that has some kind of listing. But I do think in this type of resource list up here, this type of resources, that list is too short. Like it doesn't include anything under the ground, like a, you know, Indigenous. I mean, maybe Indigenous should be a separate tick box because that covers a whole bunch of things.
there's also Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's likely to be more Japanese than Indigenous on Bowen, I would think.
Yeah. And values could also include things like, you know, Lieben would also, I think, come under a values statement as well. You know, we value the, you know, the cultural and artistic history of Bowen Island. So it might not just be ethnic, but broader cultural. Yeah.
I guess maybe should there be this cultural landscape building engineering work, should there be, sorry, I'm looking at type of resource now. Should there be a category of natural?
Not historical.
Well, historical, that is a quality and not type of resource is the kind of, is what is the physical thing. So building is one of the categories, and cultural landscape, which I think could include, for example, a battlefield could be a cultural landscape. And an engineering work could include a water wheel. So it's like, what is the physical thing? So historical would be a value, or it could be a significance criteria. Yeah,
And
so
some
historical would be a significance criteria.
Some examples of historical would be, for example, in Vancouver, the Joy Kogawa House, which probably ranks mostly on the historical side of the equation as opposed to the architectural, even though it's, you know, fairly old, but it might rank lower on that scale. So it's about a physical site, but it's about historical significance. Another example in the West End, it's also a heritage building, but it's the O Canada House, and it's got cultural significance because that's where I believe the words of the English words of O Canada were first written. And so you've got the site, but you also have the historical importance of something that happened there. I guess right now, that's probably a bad example, but given the current climate around Canada and Canada Day, but it's an example of historical.
So that would be associative. The significance would be associative then from that significance criteria
with the site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have here. See that I got from. Who did I get that from? The Canadian Guide for Writing Statements of Significance. I have a list here of values, and it says the aesthetic, historic, scientific, cultural, social, or spiritual importance or significance for past, present, or future generations. That's very general, isn't it?
But that's what you need.
Yeah.
In the short run, if type of resource, if we had building, cultural landscape, engineering work, natural landscape, and that wonderful option of other, because natural landscape is covering quite a few of the things that have come up as where do they fit.
All right, I gotta go get cleaned up.
And okay, if we just sort of paid attention, I mean, we've got to keep in mind what the purpose of this thing is.
Yeah.
It's to help in a planning process that determines whether something goes onto a heritage register.
Yeah. So you're talking about type of resource, Maureen. What was your list?
Just the three that's there: natural, landscape, and other.
Yeah.
And as time went by, if there are a whole bunch of others that constitute another category, then create the other category. I mean,
that makes sense.
I feel like we should have natural as one category, and I think we should have Indigenous as one category.
Yeah, I'm okay with that as well.
Just because I think that would be a good thing to do. Okay, so natural would capture
OPA, the Cape.
Geology, paleontology.
I'm not sure whether natural would include cultural landscapes, because there would be a lot of natural in the landscape, but there's the influence of humans on it, and if it's just natural, that seems to imply things that would be there without the intervention of human beings.
I think that would be in addition to cultural landscape. So I'm suggesting that we add these categories.
Yeah.
So add Indigenous, add natural. Maybe we should add. Should we add also archaeological? Natural. archaeological, and
I think the fewer the better. And the clear gap is natural.
and then I wonder if engineering should be changed to engineering or industrial, or maybe just
Engineering or industrial would be clearer to me, or even just industrial. No, that would mean that something like the causeway would get excluded if you changed it to industrial.
Could one have a category that is structures that are not habited, they're not intended to be used as places to live in or do something. So the causeway would be a structure.
so what about building or structure?
Yeah, you could add structure to building and just have building or structure, and that would probably cover it.
Use the word architectural or structure.
That might exclude vernacular buildings like cottages that had no architectural input.
Like
They're an
the
architectural.
logging cottage.
Okay.
Building or structure, cultural landscape, indigenous, natural. I think engineering work would include things like a quarry, right? That's a quarry is not a cultural landscape, it's an engineering work. Would it would include mine adits? Would it include the corduroy road? It's not really engineering. I think the causeway would be a building or structure.
No, it would be an engineering.
Right.
It's not a building. It's just a dam.
Right.
Structure.
A dam and a bridge.
Let's for now put engineering or industrial, building or structure, cultural landscape, indigenous, natural feature. I feel like there needs to be another word there. I'm looking at you, Maureen. I don't know if you can tell by Zoom.
No, I'm staring at a form.
I don't know, natural or ecological? Probably the same thing.
These are getting too broad.
And we definitely need the other. I agree, because it's like a survey where you ask people a series of survey questions, tick the boxes, one or more, and then you need to have other, please specify, right? In case you haven't caught something.
Yeah. Okay. And then other. I think natural doesn't need another word because it's a type of resource and the resource is natural. Okay. So Steph.
Can I make a suggestion before we analyze this? The indigenous piece is bothering me. I'm wondering if it needs to be a separate category altogether. So we've got type of resources, and then we have somewhere on the form, indigenous, yes, no. Because you could have buildings, you could have something that's built, you could have something that's natural.
My concern thinking about this, and I'm not sure if it's the same concern, is that why are we separating out indigenous as opposed to other ethnicities that might be important? It's almost like we're, for political reasons, elevating indigenous to its own category, whereas it could fit into other cultural assets, like Japanese, for example. Why is indigenous by its own, but Japanese isn't?
Because it might trigger the need for certain kinds of consultation by a planning department. Whereas something that was Japanese probably would not.
But couldn't it be a tick box in the category, Indigenous, yes, no?
Sorry, Peter, say that again?
I said, but couldn't it be a checkbox within a category, a broader category, where you'd have the question Indigenous site, question mark, yes, no?
But the reason I would say have a separate box with Indigenous in the type of resource. So I think the question that we're asking at the moment, if I have everybody right, is do we or not have a tick box in the type of resource category that is named Indigenous, and or do we have a separate completely separate category of the kind of form level of like a type of resource, and then Indigenous or not, like a separate category entirely for that, because it might trigger a different kind of assessment. And I'd say that the reason I would have a tick box that says Indigenous is because there may be things like, for example, a culturally modified tree, which is not natural, it's not a landscape, it's not an engineering work. I mean, I guess arguably say it's an engineering work. It's not a building, it's not under the ground. You know, there are, and I think it reflects the intangibility of Indigenous activity on the island. Like a lot of it is, a lot of the traces of Indigenous occupation are small and fragile and organic. And so I think it does need a kind of, it doesn't really fit into any of the other categories.
So are you thinking that a culturally modified tree would not fall under cultural landscape? And if so, maybe that category needs to be cultural site or landscape, which would then include culturally modified trees.
Cultural site, that's interesting.
So
you just broaden the landscape category to include sites as well as landscapes, which sounds much bigger, like a field or something.
So in Ontario, I did notice that what constitutes a cultural landscape was quite broad, and quite a bit of Indigenous heritage assets fell into that. So I think that it might be useful for myself to work with you guys to provide definitions for some of these types of factors, so that will help any future staff or future committees, and just to explicitly, if something says building or structure, that way we know, we can just be clear about what falls into that. I'm of the mindset that it might be good to have a separate category. So a question that planners should always ask ourselves is, who are we planning for? And I feel like that translates well to cultural heritage. It's whose heritage are we paying attention to? So I actually, Peter, I think you brought up a really good point about we need to be careful not to elevate certain groups above others. So an option would be to create a new category and to indicate whether the history is settler, colonial, Indigenous, or some sort of minority group. I feel like maybe that's just a rough idea. But Rondi, I think you were waving your hand there.
Yeah, well, I think we're overthinking it. You could just have one checkbox for Indigenous and we'll figure it out if we find anything on the island. There's very few things on the island that are really Indigenous.
Yeah, a lot of what we've been told through contacts with some members of the Coast Salish, I guess the Squamish peoples is that there was no habitation on the island, but there was visitation, and there are some sites that may have midden status, and maybe other implements, and so they would be archaeological, and they would also fall under historical, because obviously there's probably 10,000 years of Indigenous history. So anyway.
So for Steph's sake, have we come to a landing on that?
So for the categories, I have building or structure, cultural site or landscape, engineering or industrial, natural, other, and then no landing on that last issue.
Yeah.
But I do feel like on the form, where it says publicly owned, yes, no.
Yeah.
Underneath there might be a good location for whatever you land on. That makes sense.
As far as Indigenous or not? Or-
Yeah.
Well, I guess Indigenous sites could be on, someone's private property could actually have an Indigenous site on it. It wouldn't always be public.
Again, we're overthinking it. Let's just put a check mark by Indigenous, and if something comes up, we'll look at it.
So I think, and then Amanda will be doing the work on the form and is excited about that. So all this great discussion and work, how about she has a hack at it? I've got extensive notes. She's been taking notes. She can do a hack at it and then run it by you guys by email, maybe for ratification next meeting.
I do think we'll need to look at it again, because we're not finalizing, we're thinking. So and so I feel like we've discussed that enough, and I agree that it would be good to draft it and have another look.
So what do you think about doing like everyone filling in the form, like everyone pick? Sorry. Everyone pick an item and then fill in the form and see what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah. Now the value summary, I personally think it would be good to add in a list of values in that in the little intro thing in there. What do you think about that, people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
And your list is included in the report, so Amanda would have that for reference.
Yeah.
And maybe run this by some of the other planners just to see, does this make sense or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, can we just scroll down the rest of the form and see if there's anything else? The significance criteria, associative, contextual, or tangible. I guess that's a way of getting around, those criteria are a way of getting around the fact that a tangible, so a modified tree would be tangible, like a mine at it is tangible, but a basal site is not tangible, it's not something you can see, so it's associative. And some places may have no, a building, for example, my mum used to live next to, my gran used to live near the house that Paul McCartney was born in. And it used to have buses full of tourists who would come and take photos of this little council house, which is exactly identical to all of the other little council houses on that street, and many, many, many council houses that were built in that period. So then that's contextual, right? And it's
I went to Mick Jagger's, Melissa, in Kent.
Right.
It's the same as all of them.
Contextual and historical. It's a lot like Canada House or Joy Kagawa. Maybe not the Canada House, but Joy Kagawa House is like every little humble bungalow built on a street in South Vancouver, in Marpole.
So I think then probably those significance criteria are fine. I think they probably capture everything. Then the last is the integrity criteria, which I think are also fine.
Yeah, I agree.
And I am also not very interested in integrity criteria. Seems like a fairly somewhat old-fashioned concept. Okay, that was hard work. I think we're there. And we'll have another look at it at the next meeting. And if so, I think what's going to happen is Amanda is going to do a redraft, and then she's going to circulate it by email to us, and we'll take a look at it. And what, you know, between now and the next meeting, and maybe either actually or in our minds, pick a heritage resource that an awkward heritage resource that we can imagine, and see how it fits onto the form. Test run it, and Amanda will also show it to her fellow planners and see what they make of it. And then hopefully by the next meeting we'll have a, you know, we'll be able to sign off on it. Okay, does that sound like a plan?
Well, Leslie, you did make a somewhat derogatory comment about integrity, but a good example is you've got two houses right next to each other. One has all of its historic fabric and detailing and all of that, and the one right next to it, there's nothing left. It's been stuccoed over. It's got, you know, vinyl siding. You know, everything else has been stripped off. The windows are aluminum, and all that's left really is the structure. Does that still have value, even though it once had the same integrity? So that's the kind of lens. I think that's why integrity is in there. So just for fullness. Yeah.
What's interesting, just note in terms of the difference between the significance criteria and the integrity criteria. With the significance criteria, you have to meet one of those points. With the integrity, you're expected to meet all. And that's something you may want to think about.
Huh.
What's the asterisk for?
If the evaluator has selected any no's in the aspect of integrity and determined that the heritage resources by selecting yes, the threshold, please provide a written description in the box below justifying the decision. Can you read that?
Yeah. Yeah, I had to peer, but I read.
Yeah, it's very, very small. I mean, note that does the heritage resource satisfactory meet the above criteria? So so I guess that's why the justification below is it satisfactory or not satisfactory? And doesn't say all the above category.
No, it doesn't. I missed that. Yeah.
We could change, or I could change the form to say, does the heritage resource meet at least half of the above criteria?
I think that I think because there's also not applicable. Is that not? Yeah, not applicable. So, like, for example, feeling is one of the categories. Expression of aesthetic or historic sense of a particular period of time. So, like, when would you choose, like, no over not applicable? I guess if it's been modified so much, it no longer looks like Paul McCartney's birthplace anymore. And then you have to justify why you still think it's valuable. And I guess you would say, well, you know, he's so famous and people are really interested.
Yeah, I would caution against using a qualifier like half of.
Yeah.
Because then that puts you into a box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's leave it as it is, and we'll just see how it works. We can always change it. I guess what I want to make sure is that we don't, I think the important thing is that we don't write the form such that important heritage resources might be missed. I think that would be.
Yeah, another way to
Oh, this is,
handle that might be if the site doesn't, the asset doesn't meet this criteria, or enough of the criteria, give an explanation of why the criteria that do meet the standard are sufficient. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I expressed myself very well.
Yeah,
It makes sense. And I think that's actually what that
what they're driving at.
piece is
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it flunked, but it's still worthwhile.
Yeah.
Here's the argument.
Yeah. That's good. I think we're good.
Amanda, just a quick note. It's the down here, it's the Bowen Island Municipal Heritage Commission.
Okay, yep, I can make that change.
Okay. So I'm conscious of time here, guys.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Share. And I guess you guys can just send, Amanda's included on the Heritage Commission email, group email, hc@bimbc.ca. You just send her afterthoughts. You have them.
Thank you. All right, sign it. Oh, no, next. Yes, signage.
So
Yeah.
I just included tons of images. I don't know if people had a chance to look at them.
I did. Thank
A
you.
lot.
Thank you for digging all of those out.
You and Amanda helped you.
Thank you, Amanda.
Is it
Wanna
possible
look
to
at
share
everything
screen?
now? Okay, you want me to do it all now? Okay.
So the purpose of this was to give us context for the heritage signage project. Is that correct?
Yes.
Are you creating a sign, like creating a standard sign for signing heritage? Yeah, creating a template?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So here is,
The question
I have
is doing it.
I have a question actually. In there's a document there which is like the branding guide, and it's got in it like an ad and like an info sheet, and it's got all kind of stuff that's been designed. Like, who did that designing?
Rethink. It was part of the branding project that Community Economic Development was involved in several years ago.
I wondered if we should ask them to design. A
I don't
heritage
think
sign.
so. Our connection has retired
Right.
from Rethink, but this is something that, given the precedent and the work that's been done within the municipality, that Sophie could potentially take on, or at least should be asked, I would assume. With all of the signage, Steph, all of the signage examples here, who did the work on those? Was that
so, well, that's so many people, and that's kind of, Carla does a lot of work. Emma has done some work. Bonnie, Sophie. Yeah. And there seems to be like there was a wayfinding initiative that went through transportation. Parks obviously has a lot of signage for them. Sophie does all the work for postering. There's been external people, like the health center has used some of this
Yeah, I'm going to have
imagery.
to excuse myself. I have another meeting. That's it. 6:30. See you guys later.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you, Randy.
You're on it.
Have a good meeting.
So it does, yeah, it feels like there's a need for some kind of a central point when it comes, like when I was doing for the EDC, the washroom signage.
Yeah.
We're just kind of scrambling around to find some support for that. There's no like sign department.
I
So
wonder if Sophie should be the person.
my prior work experience is in communications and marketing, so I can use Adobe Creative Suite. So I could likely collaborate with Sophie and I could draft something and then run it past her to make sure that it adheres to brand guidelines. But that is something I'm comfortable with.
Great.
I mean, basically what we want is like something that's brand consistent, but has space for like a photo and some writing, right? That's what we want, and possibly a QR code.
Yeah.
How does
So
this-
I guess sorry.
How does this integrate with the Heritage Trail signage, or does it?
I mean, that's a question, isn't it? Like I kind of feel like it's a slightly different endeavor.
Sorry, so there are the BC signs.
Mm-hmm.
No fun logos. And then here's your Heritage Trail.
Yeah.
Is there a sign on here? This is your site, right, Melissa?
Yeah. It's not a sign, but they do look similar.
But they look similar to the BC ones.
They look similar to that. Hang on, I've actually got one here, which I'm supposed to have put up. Oh, my legs have seized it. There you go. It's like sharing a screen.
Ah! So that's the sign. That's what you're going to see on the post in the trail.
Yeah, those
Obviously,
are
I haven't gone.
this is like an actual,
So that's a nice image and text
and the QR code.
and the QR code.
And in this case, it has the map of the trail.
What if that was used as sort of a foundational piece, and the municipal aspect of the register was simply added? You know, so that
Well,
the connection was clear.
yeah, I mean that's my plan for the Heritage Trail, for that grant that we just got. I was just going to do these exact same ones but we're talking about like for like for the Yamada site and stuff like that, right? I mean, we could do this for all of them, all of the sites on Bowen, and then they could all be part of that app if that's what's wanted. Somebody has to make a decision about it. And just so for comparison, this is a letter-sized piece of paper, just so you know how big it is. Like a little bit. So I guess it's pretty much 11.5 inches, and I don't know, 6.5 inches wide maybe.
I wonder if that's something we could leave with Amanda, you know, to keep in mind the municipal branding guidelines, but also to look at the Heritage Trail, what's been done already, and see how there's some sort of meshing is possible.
Yeah, this is John's brand that he invented for his.
Is that online somewhere, Melissa? Vanna White. Can I just send? That's got to be online somewhere. I can send to Amanda.
I'm sure. I don't think so. Well, probably is.
Well, here,
somewhere.
I'll just take a picture of you doing that. Do it again. Or you take a picture of the actual sign and send it to Amanda.
Funny.
Or we can go walk the trail, maybe, Amanda, at lunch tomorrow or something.
Yeah. I do. I'm sure I have somewhere I've got the copies of the signs, but I would have to.
I'm not sure that the heron image bespeaks heritage or history.
It's a woodpecker.
It bespeaks trails, but I think we need to think about that. In my mind, we had
really
something
struggled with that, so we ended up using this, I don't know, little picture, but then he actually, so originally we had one thing And then he ended up putting actually a different photo for each one. So this is the general store, and this is the general store sign. I should have asked Rondi, because the reason I've got it is I want to ask him if I can put it on his finger post. I keep forgetting to ask him. I should have. I've got it. Rondi, can I put this on your finger post?
Are you
Yeah, we
thinking
couldn't.
font?
Can you think of something like a thing, like a suitable thing to represent heritage? We scratched our heads. I mean, John had a cart, and I'm like, how is a cart representative of Bowen? Like we couldn't.
Yeah.
We couldn't come up with anything. In England, it's a castle. That doesn't
Or
work.
cottage? What about cottage?
Yeah, like, or
Just to rub it in.
the gable of the old general store. Although the problem with that image is that perhaps it's too colonial. But another thing, it could be a cottage, or it could even be a window of a cottage. Just that, old window design.
So has anyone, so just off the top of my head and looking at the municipality's existing branding, if one animal, if we wanted to stay consistent, that could potentially represent heritage could be an owl.
Or a dinosaur.
Like a stegosaurus.
Adaptation of the Slow with the frog image, except it's a dinosaur image.
I like the owl. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
But has anyone talked to Sophie, or have there been any conversations with Sophie about this before? Is she aware that we're thinking of creating our own little icon? Okay.
Yeah.
I would I can check with her, because I know sometimes communications managers or officers do, a lot of organizations are very protective of their collateral materials, and you could check with them before working on anything that's different.
Definitely.
If we can have a frog, we can have an owl.
Yeah.
Because the frog was an addition to the original four brand mascot.
Yeah, and there's snake now too.
Yeah, there's
And turtles live a long time. Some turtles live 300 years. So that would be another.
Ooh. Peter doesn't like the owl for some reason, but turtles. I wrote down turtle. I didn't write down dinosaur.
Stuff out,
Yeah.
I think that turtle's a good idea. Well, maybe ask Sophie. Maybe she'll come up with something. I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it, that it's what people associate most. So with heritage, so more ideas, the better, I think. Okay, so if you will ask Sophie, Amanda, that would be awesome. And yeah. And I'm sure John will be happy with any changes.
Nice.
The only thing is that we need to figure it out soon, because, we need to get on with that project.
An owl with old-fashioned spectacles.
Yeah.
I like that.
A book.
Or a book.
A long beard.
Okay.
Okay. 628 chair.
we're running over.
Yeah. Where did
The next was the
agenda
look
go?
at the registry.
Yeah, look at the registry. I don't really know. I'm not really sure what that is, but I think it's that we want to decide where the register should go and what format it should be in, like a physical copy. And also what do we want to do with keeping it on the Muni website? And I kind of feel like we can quickly decide where we should send copies and what they should look like, because I think the places it should go would be the library and the 2 heritage organizations and the Muni, and it should be printed and bound. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
What kind of binding are their choices?
With
Very
the
short.
with the other plans, we have had them saddle stitched and professionally printed and saddle stitched. But part of this was that at the moment the design is not strong and not consistent with the other documents, like the
Right.
park
Right.
plan or the strategic
Yeah.
climate plan. So down the road, I think when we've got more of a landing with the elements of the strategic plan, that and the register could be put together in a bound version. In the short run, it's uploaded to the Heritage Commission page on the Muni website as a PDF. And that's probably, personally, I think that's good enough in the short run. And the printed and saddle stitch version could come next spring.
Sorry, what's saddle stitching? Is that like Surlocks?
No, it's like you've got a staple in it.
Oh.
Because it's not a great big document.
Okay. And I guess in terms of number of printed copies, we're talking half a dozen.
It's just a handful, yeah.
Yeah.
Little custom job. That's what we do with most of the plans that are published now. Sometimes more for the island plan.
Does that come out of our budget or out of the general municipal budget?
It's not a lot of money. It'd be like in the tens. So for production, but the actual design work and the labor involved, that's staff time.
So who would we do who would make it brand consistent then?
It's been handled the same way as the signage. There's a template that's established, and individual staffers have taken the lead in getting things produced.
So that's Amanda then?
I think so.
Amanda, welcome to the Heritage Commission. We only meet 4 times a year.
Yeah, no, again, at my previous job, I did document layouts in InDesign as well. So that's good. I think the only, in my experience, it does always take longer than you expect to even just to migrate an existing Word document into something like InDesign, which would make it look professional. So it can take a while, but I quite liked Maureen's suggestion that maybe this is something I could start working on now, and then we can try to get it done later in the year. I will just say that planning is quite busy right now, so I need to balance this with processing development permits, but I'm happy to work on this, and we can definitely get this done. It might just need to take a back burner to the signage or whatever. If you guys just let me know what's a priority so I could prioritize what we need this summer or for early fall, that would help me allocate my time.
So Peter, can I just ask a question here? So I think there was a question about photos in the document, and I know that Judy was concerned that the photos weren't nice, but there's also, I think the photos need to be, I think there's a couple of different purposes. There's one of the purposes is to take a photograph of the document as of the structure as it is, as a historical record, so that you can say, hey, you just chopped that big piece off of the building, that kind of thing. So I think we probably need a contemporary photo that describes the building. And then that potentially one could also have a historical photo or a nicer photo. Now, what do you think about that statement, Peter? Is that correct, or?
Well, I'm not, some of the sites probably have shortcomings in terms of image. Others I thought were nice enough. So it would be useful to identify which ones we feel fall short. I think we should have a if possible, have a historical contemporary, but we may not be able to find the historical. But if possible, we should.
Maybe.
I'm not a professional photographer, so you know, I've gone out and some of the pictures in the register are probably ones I took, but there's limitations taking something on your iPhone. I have a better quality camera, but still, I don't. I'm not a professional photographer, so that's an issue.
I wonder if the three of us could take a closer look at the registry and identify the photographs that we think need to be replaced with something that's better quality. So that would be an action item for the commission as opposed to one for Amanda. And then we could figure out, you know, how to fill the gap if they're significant gaps.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember just a handful where I thought, oh, you know, this could be better. And to some extent, for me, the issues had to do with the layout more than the photograph. The photos were sort of constrained by the layout in a way that wasn't particularly attractive, because it was a quick job getting that just laid out in Word. You go into InDesign and you actually think about it with a designer's eye, and you could make a much better use of white space and position the photographs to better advantage. And I think that would probably deal with some of the problems that we're seeing right now. And we might not need to replace as many.
Some could be cropped. Maybe the light could be adjusted.
Exactly.
One of the sites that I did think we were challenged on was the Orchard Cottages site itself. We were kind of rushed to get something in there, but if we're limited to one picture that says it all, we need to somehow get a shot that is a close-up enough of an individual cottage and yet gives a sense of more of a sense of the site as a landscape. And that's kind of a balancing act.
I think that site should have a couple more photos, because it is a site, not a building. And so it makes sense to me that there would be more photographs to describe the entire site. I did see one recently, a great historical, it's like one of the few that I've seen actually includes the cottages from the water. I wish I could remember where that was, but I think, yeah, we should see if we can put a couple more photos in that section.
And some interiors would be good.
Yeah.
Interiors of the museum cottage, because so many people have never been inside that museum cottage, and it's a photogenic little place.
Yeah, absolutely. An important thing in photo taking as well is to go at a time that you're not pointing the camera into the sun. So, you know, to time it so that you're getting good definition.
If some photos are getting retaken, will they be taken with on an iPhone or on a DSLR camera? Because iPhones can work okay, but if I do find that for design and for printed documents, it is a little bit better to have images that were captured on a DSLR if the municipality or one of you happen to have one available.
I have one too.
Uni has one too.
Okay.
The thing about my iPhone is I can go into the settings and adjust the light and contrast and stuff like that, which I don't think I can do with my DSLR because it's fairly old.
Okay. I think that's everything for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's next? Island plan.
Yeah, so it's just, I think this is really more of an information item than anything else. The section in which the heritage is identified in the island plan has to do with helping to ensure continued involvement in the orchard revitalization and also completing the heritage strategic plan.
Right.
So it's in the section related to preserving island identity, and we're on both of those 2 points.
You want me to show it?
No, it's not necessary. And the only thing that, now I remember why it's under business arising. I'd like us as a commission to be thinking in terms of what would we like to see in next year's island plan, because we'll start working on that in the fall. Is there something specific that's important to the commission that you'd like to see in the next plan? And from each of the committees, we're going to bring some recommendations to that strategic planning session in mid-fall. So just to think about that, and doesn't need to be discussed this evening.
Yeah.
But I will put it as an action though.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, I see we've got the meeting schedule and the work plan, which I think is just to keep us checking in on the work plan. And I think we are good on that. We need to decide the meeting schedule to decide on the next meeting. And then we have those other items that we tagged onto the end of the agenda, which were the symposium, the grant. So the grant thing is just to say that I did get the grant from Heritage BC for doing the signage, symposium and membership. So clearly we need to advertise for more members. So just really to say, and to you, Peter, if you can think of anybody that we should, who might be interested, please approach them and encourage them to join the commission, because we have not many members right now. Also, presumably the municipality will advertise. Steph?
You know what? I just missed that last bit.
I was
Sorry.
just saying that the Muni will advertise for new members for the commission.
I will. Yeah. So I will.
And write to Bowen Heritage and Museum and Archives and the Hearth.
Yeah.
And invite them specifically to attend. Are there any other island organizations that might? I can't think of any.
Yeah.
Maybe the old steamship crew. They might be jazzed. They might be
Steamship
jazzed about heritage. Get it? Steamship days.
How many of them are still on island? I mean, Alan. Maybe we could look into that.
Yeah.
The Bayak or the Hearth.
Yeah, Hearth. Yeah, Hearth and Hearth, Museum and Archives and Bowen Heritage are the obvious.
Library.
Yeah.
Wonder about Tamsin. She's
I mentioned Peter. Let's not talk about individual people.
Okay.
Maybe we can sign off. Do you guys want to sign off and then?
No, we still got one more thing to talk about, which is the next meeting. Dates for the next meeting. Do we want to set a date?
Well, we need to know what Metro's doing, or do we just tell Metro and they appear?
Why don't we pick a date, suggest it to Metro, say,
okay.
If they say, yes, we'll be there, or could you find an alternative?
Sure. Okay, so September, I don't know why I'm always so scared of September. What about the third week? And today is a Wednesday, but Wednesday, September 22nd at 5:00 p.m.
Sure.
Sorry, say that again.
Wednesday, September 22nd at 5:00 p.m.
That should be okay. We have UBCM that week, but UBCM is by,
I have it the week before.
I've got it the week of the, oh, you're right.
I've
Yeah,
got it the 13th to the 18th.
yeah, no, that's fine. My calendar is just displaying ugly. So 22nd.
So just FYI, I have a lot of evening work commitments in September, which aren't scheduled yet. They're annual general meetings of all of the Business Improvement Association societies, which part of my job is to observe. So if there's a conflict, and a lot of them hold their AGMs in the last 2 weeks of September. So just FYI.
So does that, you're doing long days during that period then, or can you take some time off during the day maybe?
Yeah, I could consider that. It's just that the evenings tend to be evening meetings, starting around 5 or 6. So, you know, if there's a conflict, I'd have to choose that.
Well, why don't we just get this slotted in for now? And then I don't know if we can have you, at this point, Peter, your quorum to the max.
Yeah,
So
basically.
we'll just have to be flexible.
But also that meeting was supposed to be, I'm just looking at it now, it's supposed to be talking about the Heritage Strategic Plan, developing a table of contents for that, and looking at planning tools and policies, and finalizing our budget request. And I think that is a lot per meeting, and I don't think we can also talk to Metro in the same meeting. And I wonder if we should push that meeting. I don't know. What do you think, Maureen? I'm wondering if we should push it into October then. Of course, then the November meeting is January, and the January meeting is, I guess the November meeting could be in December.
Why don't we not, why don't we take into account your concern about there being too much on the agenda and see whether Metro can even join us on that date? Because they may say this doesn't work. Could we look at some time in October? If they say yes, it's fine. We could go ahead with them and pare back the meeting a little bit in September.
They did mention the possibility of a freestanding meeting.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to meet with them in August. Every day's the same these days.
August isn't great.
It's not great. Not great for you.
August is vacations. August is prep for school for some of us. No, it's got to be September, I think.
Okay. Well, we could push the meeting, our next meeting, to October, and the following meeting to December, and so on, and meet with them in September. But I don't think we can have them at that meeting, because that's a lot for one meeting. There's already a lot for one meeting. There's no way we could also talk to Metro as well.
Or you can split that list up, like Metro and one of those items, and then October.
Yeah, they're not going to come over and speak with us for 2.5 hours. They'll come over and speak with us for half an hour. It's more.
Yeah. Then if we were going to push something, we'd push the planning tools and policies, because we need to do the Heritage Strategic Plan, the budget request to get into the budget cycle, right? That's why we're doing those at that meeting.
So Steph, are you talking about 5 to 7 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I'll send this invitation now. Done.
Okay, great.
And just FYI, the first week of October is usually works for me. So that's only 1 week past September. So that's a thought too.
Well, I just sent it, Peter. Okay.
Well, I had to try to get a word in edgewise.
Guys,
Maybe we
guys, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to leave. I've got to go to
Yeah.
an trust
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I will just share with Peter my idea of the symposium thing then.
because when I leave, we've lost quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
You're
okay?
giddy with power.
Okay, I'm going.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Amanda.
Sorry.